Hunter, News Director at the Des Moines Register, and welcome to the Des Moines Register Political Soapbox. Our next speaker is former Senator Rick Santorum, who is running for the Republican nomination for the presidency. Mr. Santorum was first elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from Pennsylvania, and then served 2 terms in the U.S. Senate. And of course, Senator Santorum was the 2012 winner of the Iowa Republican caucuses. So, please welcome back to the soapbox stage, Senator Rick Santorum.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. I apologize for being a few minutes late, but I just came from a rally at the state capitol with the governor, lieutenant governor, Senator Lawrence, Congressman King, and others to defund Planned Parenthood. And I was very, very proud to be the only presidential candidate to not only sit up there and talked about how we have to defund Planned Parenthood, but talked about the reality that what Planned Parenthood is doing. What Planned Parenthood is doing, if you look at those videos, and I know this because I wrote the law, what Planned Parenthood is doing, and was described by the doctors in those videos, is something called a partial birth abortion. And those were done, in this case, to protect the vital organs so they could harvest the baby's organs for research and other types of nefarious things. Planned Parenthood shouldn't just be defunded. Planned Parenthood is breaking the law, federal law, and need to be prosecuted under federal law. People ask me, why am I running? Because we need someone in Washington, D.C. who can get things done, someone who can lead. I've led on the issue, everybody knows the leadership I've provided on the issue of life, on the issue of marriage, and we've gotten things done. You talk about the partial birth abortion statute, very important piece of legislation. Why? Because the United States Supreme Court said, in a Nebraska statute, a partial birth statute Nebraska passed, that banning partial birth abortion was unconstitutional. Well, most people, when they have a court decision that is against what they believe, you know what they do? Well, they do what most Republican presidential candidates have done in the case of the marriage issue. You know what they said? Well, it's the law of the land, it's time to move on. When the Supreme Court acts in an unconstitutional way, it is not the law of the land, and the last thing we need to do is move on. We need to stand up and fight. And I did. We passed a law in direct contravention to what the Supreme Court ruled. We passed a law, it was my bill, I led the fight on the floor, President Bush signed it, it went to the United States Supreme Court. And in that law, we laid out, chapter and verse, why the court was wrong. Because, ladies and gentlemen, where in the United States Constitution does it say that the Supreme Court is the superior branch of government? Every branch of government. When I took my oath of office as a senator and a House member, I pledged to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Every congressman, every senator, every president has an obligation to be faithful to the Constitution. And when one branch of government gets it wrong, as Congress and the President occasionally do, it is incumbent upon the court to put them back in place. Conversely, when the Supreme Court gets it wrong, it is incumbent upon the President and the Congress to put them back in place. I'm the only person in this race who has done that, and the Supreme Court backed down, and that's why partial birth is illegal today. And we need leadership on other issues. We are at a point in time in our country's history that 4 years ago, when I was standing on this stage, we would never imagine. What's happening around the world, the threats that are rising against America, not just from Iran and ISIS, but China and Russia, and yes, even Central and South America. This president has not just turned a blind eye, he has deliberately empowered the enemy through his actions. He's empowered Russia by not holding up to our treaties with Ukraine. He's empowered Syria. He's empowered Iran. He's empowered ISIS. He's empowered China. Every step of the way, he has been soft with our enemies and been very harsh to our allies. We need a leader who will stand for the principles of our country and for our own national security. Not to placate our enemies, but to stand with our allies to make sure that our interests are defended. Again, there's nobody in this race that has a record that I do on national security. Just about 3 months ago, ISIS published a magazine. They do on a monthly basis, I'm told. But 3 months ago, I took notice, because 3 months ago, my picture was in their magazine. And it was under the headline, "In the words of our enemy." And it was my picture right underneath that, next to a quote of mine, where I laid out who they are. And I laid out very clearly, as I have in speeches, why and how they can be defeated. That put me on ISIS enemy list. Ladies and gentlemen, there's nobody else in this race who has been on that list. And certainly, unfortunately, neither is the President of the United States or Hillary Clinton. Why am I on that list? Because for the last dozen years after 9/11, I have spent time and treasure to understand the nature of our enemy. Those sanctions that brought Iran to the bargaining table, that crushed them and forced them to think about negotiating away at least part of their nuclear program. I was the author of those sanctions 10 years ago. I fought for those sanctions. And you know who fought against me? Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and John Kerry. And I beat them. We won, and those sanctions were put in place.